This is the chalice of Father Larocque, and it's about 67 years old. And if this chalice could talk, the different stories he could tell us would be really incredible.
It was November 25th, 1908, and the T&NO train was on its way to the new station and the future site of the town of Cochrane, Ontario.
So, you going to Cochrane?
Yes, it'll be a new adventure for me.
Well, I hope you won't be bidding on the same lots that my wife and I are bidding on.
Bidding?
Yes, the auction at the station tomorrow, the 26th. It's the day we've been waiting for. They're giving out all the lots that will form the town of Cochrane. We're looking at the location near the lake. We won't have to walk far for water.
I wish you all the best, my children. I'm also hoping to build a new house, but not my own. It would be God's house. I'm the new priest, Father Desjardins, and I pray that I'll be able to start the Catholic Church in Cochrane. It'll be called the Transfiguration Church.
Tough job. Tough place. Good luck, Father.
Yes, thank you, and God willing, I wish to see you and many more at our first service.
That first service ended up being at the land's title office. Father Desjardins approached the T&NO, who had donated all the land needed for the foundation of the Transfiguration Church. The first church was built by Father Desjardins, who soon left for Timmins and was replaced by the energetic Father Gascon. Father Gascon's arrival in Cochrane was indeed memorable. In his first week in Cochrane, he was standing on the bank of Lake Commando behind what is our post office today, contemplating his presence in this community. Deep in thought, he lost his footing and fell in the lake. To the rescue came Wallace, the Anglican minister, and Officer Gus McManus. A canoe was quickly ushered into the water, and Minister Wallace managed to pull Father Gascon out by his long hair. It looked as if they were too late, and Gascon was presumed dead, but doctors Henderson, Hunt, and Foley attempted to revive him. Their attempts were fruitless, and exhausted, two of the doctors agreed that after so much time, the man had indeed passed. The third doctor, however, refused to accept this and gave it a last try, and Father Gascon miraculously did breathe again. The father's work in Cochrane had nearly been stopped before he'd had a chance to start it. Father Gascon built the first church and rectory on the land where the former St. Joseph's School still stands. This church had roughly 800 parishioners and was quite a substantial start for a Catholic church in the wild, rugged frontiers of northern Ontario. But in 1911, tragedy struck and Cochrane was devastated by its first fire, a fire that destroyed most of the town, including the first church. Before being transferred to Chapleau in 1911, Father Gascon had started to build a 2-story house on the corner of 8th Avenue and 5th Street. The second church was built where the old convent had stood. In spite of all the hardships he had endured in Cochrane, his brush with death by fire and water, he could not help but fondly remember his time in Cochrane. Ah, those were the happy days. Father Joseph-Henri Larocque served our church for 30 years and was instrumental in establishing our Catholic presence in Cochrane. He was born in Chambly, Quebec, April 21st, 1882, and ordained priest May 24th, 1909. He ruled with an iron fist and was thus both loved and feared by all who had the opportunity to meet him.
Autoritaire.
Autoritaire, bien autoritaire,
Oui.
puis bien strict. Il a fait pleurer des sœurs. Puis il brassait les affaires pas mal fort.
Tirait les oreilles. Voilà, juste pour dire
Je
ça.
pense que c'était la première autorité en ville que je connaissais comme... On parle d'enfance, nous autres, là.
In 1915, the construction of a new church was started, but due to a lack of funds, the construction was stopped and a roof was constructed over the foundation. This church, recognized as the basement church, was used until 1970. From 1914 to 1918, the First World War was in full motion overseas. At the pew in the Transfiguration Church, Larocque would preach the following: I ask for prayers for our men and women who are sacrificing their lives for Cochrane and for our country. Let us not forget to purchase a Mass for our deceased. Also, those of you who are disorderly from alcohol will be shown the door. You are filled by the Spirit, but not by the Holy One. The chapel is to be kept clean and no spitting on the ground. Larocque would announce that Lieutenant Cole from Haileybury would speak on enrollment of our parishioners and inform us about the recruitment meeting at the theatre. The call of war was loud and all too clear. In mid-war in 1916, Cochrane faced its own challenge, the second of the devastating fires. In 1923, typhoid hits Cochrane, and about 100 people of the over 1,000 cases reported would die. The disease had struck nearly a third of the population, which stood at nearly 3,500. In that somber year, our church had 74 funerals, the majority of them a result of the typhoid. Father Larocque was, as one can imagine, deeply disturbed by the seemingly endless streak of tragedy. One of the families most severely affected was the Pilon family. Both parents, mother and father of 4 children died. Father Larocque would indeed become even more of a father when he adopted all 4 young children, Hubal, Euclide, Jeannette, and Louis. They ranged in ages from 3 to 10. Thanks to Father Larocque, they all had a good life. Hubal was a farmer, Euclide a barber, Jeannette a registered nurse, and Louis, the youngest, went on to become a doctor. Under Father Larocque, the Transfiguration Church suffered a double bankruptcy. The church and the school were affected. These were difficult times for the church and the pioneers of Cochrane. Despite the hardships, Father Larocque helped many people who crossed his path. By the year 1941, the debt of the church had reached $100,000. The bishop asked Father Larocque to resign. He solemnly obeyed and within days left Cochrane. In spite of these financial woes, the Transfiguration had its church and the school. The cemetery, established in 1917, had begun to etch the town's history in stone. Although there was somewhat of a love-hate relationship between the stern father and the parishioners, the man's heart was huge and no one went hungry or was left out in the cold. Father Larocque passed away in Montreal in 1949. World War II raged from 1939 to 1945, and the ring of battle echoed through all of the lands. In 1941, Father Achille Cournoyer arrives to put finances in order and repair the battered church. This task only took him 5 years to put the church in the black. Achille Cournoyer was born December 27, 1892, in Saint-Simon-de-Bagot, Quebec, and ordained priest July 25, 1919. One of his accomplishments was to establish a board of education to oversee the operation of the Catholic school. This was greatly appreciated by the Sisters of Assumption, who had a huge role in the Catholic education system. Father Cournoyer was also very helpful in the reopening of the Académie Saint-Joseph borders. The nuns lived and worked in various buildings in Cochrane. As you can see from the various buildings and locations, they were an integral part of the Catholic movement of not only Cochrane, but the northern frontier. In 1914, the first nun arrived in Cochrane, and the Transfiguration Church to this day had the honor of being graced by the presence of approximately 200 nuns from the Sisters of Assumption of the Virgin Mary. The nuns had a huge influence on the operations of the church and a boarding school. The convent was established in 1922 and opened its doors to 27 girls. The nuns housed and educated approximately 925 girls from all over northern Ontario. They also educated 760 non-resident students.
On a beau dire, on a beau faire, va-t-on cacher ce que l'on doit faire? Pas toujours. J'aime à rire et à chanter, croyez-vous que je suis toujours gai? Pas toujours. Si l'on me prie en compagnie, croyez-vous que je peux refuser? Pas toujours. Les gens qui veulent me calomnier, je leur dirai qu'ils seront damnés pour toujours. Pas beau ça. Arthur me disait l'autre jour, es-tu fidèle à tes amours? Pas toujours. J'en ai déjà aimé un autre, j'aime la vie et ses appas? Pas toujours. Ah, doit-on prendre l'amour? Est-ce que l'on dit tour à tour? Pas toujours, car l'amour nous fait souvent des ennuis, des ennemis, pour toujours. Si un garçon vous parle d'amour, faut-il le payer de retour? Pas toujours. S'il paraît franc et sincère, faudrait-il toujours le croire? Pas toujours. S'il nous raconte des histoires, doit-on lui être bien sévère? Pas toujours. Car Dieu nous a mis sur la terre, c'est pour tâcher de lui plaire pour toujours. Toutes les jeunes filles qui font des sœurs, pensez-vous qu'elles ont du cœur? Pas toujours. Elles se renferment pour prier, mais pensez-vous qu'elles font pitié? Pas toujours. Quand elles voient un beau garçon, pensez-vous qu'elles disent prions? Pas toujours. Car j'en connais qui rêvent tout haut et qui disent j'en veux un beau pour toujours. Ça, c'est pas vrai.
In October of 1945, the Von Trapp family was a surprise guest at the Académie Saint-Joseph, the nuns' boarding school. La Baronne Von Trapp and her 7 girls sang during church and spoke of their beautiful Austria to all the students of St. Joseph. The convent closed its doors in 1957. The Catholic school was organized by Father Larocque in 1912. By 1922, because of their growing numbers, the Anglophone students occupied 2 classrooms. And in 1966, Pavillon Saint-Joseph School was established and then replaced with the Eileen Wright Catholic School in 1994. One of the most interesting principals for the school arrived in 1951. Sister Bernadette de l'Immaculée Conception, as quoted by Sister Claire Tremblay in her book Marcheuse à l'Étoile, says Sister Bernadette established an atmosphere of joy, tranquility, and well-being in the school for 17 years. She communicated so well her enthusiasm to the students that they had great success in scholarships, music festivals, and competitions. Today, our Catholic school, Nouveau Regard, is a tribute to all the hard work of our forefathers and the pride of the Catholics in our community. Father Achille Cournoyer was replaced by Father Jules Simon in 1953. Jules Simon was a chaplain of the Second World War. He was a huge supporter of the Knights of Columbus, Leagues of the Sacred Heart, and a member of the Canadian Legion. The Knights of Columbus was established in 1919. The order has been called the strong right arm of the Church and has been praised by popes, presidents, and other world leaders for support of the Church, programs of evangelization and Catholic education, civic involvement, and aid to those in need. The Ladies of Isabella has also been a huge presence in our church. Father Simon in 1954 administered the expansion of Saint Joseph School with 5 extra classes, then 2 years later built the second story that housed 6 more classes. On April 22, 1957, Father Simon died of a stroke and was buried in our cemetery. Father Simon is one of 3 priests buried here. They are Fathers Simon, Béliveau, and Dubé. Évariste Béliveau arrived in 1957 and continued the planning that Father Simon started regarding the construction of our present church. During his stay, he unfortunately witnessed the demolition of the nuns' Académie Saint-Joseph. He was also here to help with the construction of the new convent that overlooks the Lake Commando. Father Béliveau died in Cochrane, May 24, 1964. It should be noted that in his years in Cochrane, the number of Catholics was 2,700, about 60% of the population.
Évariste Béliveau, he was a priest who died in 64, I think, so I did not get to know him at all. I heard all about him. I know that he was well liked. I know also that he was quite strict, and people spoke to me about him with high praise.
Father Irénée O'Neill Cusson arrived in Cochrane August 15, 1964, and was with us until August 1972. The construction of the new church in 1969 was his greatest contribution. It should also be noted that before he left in 1972, the debt was also eliminated. This new and present church has a capacity for 500 people and costs $331,000. It should also be noted that the architects of our church also worked on many of the modern pavilions at Expo 67 in Montreal. These were years of change not only for the new church, but also for the new directions from the Catholic Church. Father Cusson was the last priest to celebrate Mass in Latin and was the first to face the parishioners during Mass. Our choir was also very happy to transform from mostly Latin singing to English and French interpretations of all our favorite hymns.
And he used to give pre-marriage courses, probably the best in our diocese, so much so that it was a shock to other priests. But for the people who followed his courses, I read all of his books. He's written several books on sexuality, on sexual relationships. He was so far ahead of his time that, as I say, it literally shocked people. But the people, the married couples who followed his courses, were enchanted. They just couldn't say enough about him. And there were people who used to come to Cochrane from Kapuskasing and from all around to come and listen to his courses. And he, in that sense, he was excellent. He was a very well-read person. He was extremely intelligent. He was very challenging intellectually speaking. In that sense, I'm very glad that I worked with him for the first few years of my life as a priest, because otherwise I would not have kept up with my reading. I would not have kept up with study.
Father Clément Filion had one of the shortest stays in Cochrane. He was with us for only 9 months before being transferred to Hornpain. Father Jean-Guy Mailloux was born in Saint-Honoré, Témiscouata, Quebec, on November 28, 1932, and ordained June 29, 1958.
Jean-Guy Mailloux is probably one of the better priests, people-wise, of our diocese. He is a very, how would I put that? He depends on tradition. He's a very traditional priest, but he's a very outgoing person. He's great with kids. He's great with elderly people. He's great with people. He's a people person. He has trouble changing his ways, theologically speaking, spiritually speaking. But as far as a person, as a people person, he is probably the greatest I've ever met. And he's also a comedian. He's, I would say, almost a chameleon in the sense that he adapts himself to everyone and to everything in an unbelievably good way, simply by being outgoing, by reaching out, and never afraid to go and ask somebody, to invite himself to somebody's place, to go and visit, and to create family spirit in a parish. There's none that can come anywhere near, I would say, his ankles, because he's an unbelievable person in my book.
Le bon père à Mailloux. Well, he's quite the character. He will always be loved by people throughout the diocese because he's such a person close to the people. He's a people person, and he's very close to older people, the younger generation, kids. Right now he's in Moonbeam, and they have a chapel during the summer months at the lake. And the kids love him because during Mass he has them to go in the fields, pick up flowers and bring them for offertories. So he knows that they don't want to sit, but they're able to do something else, and then they participate in the Mass. And he's very close to the people. He always have a joke. Even though he's overweight, he laughs about it and makes jokes about it. So, and whenever he sees you, like for kids and older women in the parish, when he comes in, he said, "Come and give Papir a kiss." So and people love him. Like, they just love him. They're attracted to him. I was talking to actually a student at St. Joe. Both girls are in grade 3. And when they talked about Father Mailloux, it's always, and they're only like children. And then I was talking to a young couple, a few weeks ago, and again, they love him, and the older people love him. So, and all the priests in the diocese, he has this personality of, when you know him, you have no choice but to like him.
He received his elementary education in his hometown, then attended college in Rimouski, where he completed his seminary studies. Father Mailloux was prepared to teach in Rimouski, but God and Bishop Perrin had other plans for him. He was asked to come to Hearst for 1 year to help fill the need for priests and teachers at the Hearst College. That has been a long year, but Father Jean-Guy has never regretted his decision to remain in our diocese. Father Jean-Guy Mailloux said that he is happy as a priest. His motto is, "I do my best, God does the rest." Father Laurent Dubé, born in Saint-Clément, Quebec, an ordained priest June 21, 1953, arrived in Cochrane in 1981. The original bell was blessed in 1917, the day after the cemetery was blessed by l'Abbé Abbé Brousseau. This purchase was one of the first purchases from Father Larocque. It survived the first fires, typhoid, and 2 world wars. Father Dubé was instrumental in the purchase and installation of our present bells. October 27, 1985, the 3 bells named Sol, La, and Si were blessed by Monseigneur Despatie. This was one of Father Dubé's most memorable moments. Father Dubé once said that he was happy as a priest and most happy to belong to the Diocese of Hearst, where the air is fresh and clean, and the people are warm and friendly. Father Dubé died in December 8, 2004, and was buried in our cemetery.
The first parish priest I ever met, he was in Sultan when I first met him. He asked me to replace him when I was ordained a priest in 1965. I was in Chapleau. Sultan was 50 miles down the highway. So I would take the train and go and replace him and come back. And as a result, we've always been close. And Laurent Dubé is totally French from southeast Quebec, Matane. And I remember one day when I was ordained a priest, he was talking with my mom, and he was telling, there was a couple of people who were there, and they were very pro-French, anti-English. And Father Dubé, you couldn't ask for anybody that was more pro-French. He looked at them and he listened to them for a while, and he says, it's okay to maintain your French tradition and your French language, but for God's sake, learn to speak English and learn to speak and learn to accept the English mentality, because we are, after all, working and living in Ontario. When I heard him say this, like, I was a little bit hesitant with him before that, but when I heard him say this, I totally changed my attitude on him. Father Laurent was an excellent sports person. He bowled, he played ball, whatever, he curled, whatever. But he had a temper. You did not mess around with him when he was curling or when he was bowling. You did not joke with him if he missed a shot or whatever. He would come down on you like a ton of bricks. And in that sense, some people, like, they knew he had a sense of humor, but not in play. You drew the line, and he drew it. And it was so funny because some guys knew this, and they would ring his bell, and they would sit back and they would laugh, and you'd see him, he would just turn red as a beet, and he would go after them and that. And the guys would sit there, we got you again.
Father Dubé was, we worked together in this parish for 4 years. And I knew him as a kid growing up in the Diocese of Hearst. But in 2001, when I was named parish priest here at the Transfiguration, we were at the convent in Haileybury for our annual retreat. And he told me something that really struck me. He said, "Welcome to the parish." And he said, "I'll be entirely to your service." I was the youngest priest of the diocese. He was the oldest, and he was at my service. I felt so unworthy, but I have to admit that for 4 years we worked together. He was a much more relaxed person, because I have heard comments when he was in charge of a parish and that was very strict and very stern. But that is something that when you're in charge of a parish, sometimes you have to be strict, and especially in the way that he had received his formation in the 1950s. That was the church then, but now in the 21st century you had to be different. And I have to admit that since he wasn't the parish priest, he was much more relaxed, close to the people. He really enjoyed attending different events with different organizations. And he gave me a lot of help with the hospital. He knew everybody in town, so whenever he would visit the patient, he knew everybody, so he really helped me. While he was in the hospital, I was able to do more work at the school. So he was quite a big help, and it's unfortunate that he passed away in 2004. Actually, a few days ago, it was the 4th anniversary of him passing away.
I am Father Fern Villeneuve. Here they call me Father Fern. and I was born in Olleberg. But when my father died, he was only 30 years old. We have moved to Lac Sainte-Thérèse because my mother was a Quentin. And it's really there that I went to the school, my primary grades, primary school. And I went to school for 8 years there at Lake Sainte-Thérèse. We had 2 classrooms, a school. And at the end, I've been to the Hearst College for another 8 years as a boarder.
Father Villeneuve is a priest. I replaced him here at the parish. And he's also, up to a point, an intellectual because he likes teaching. Most of his life he was always working for the school board. He had been teaching Message for quite a few years, and he's done quite a few years in theology after his bachelor degree. But at the same time, he's a man of, and that's what I've discovered lately in the last few years when we meet for different occasions, that he's a guy who, even though he seems very serious, when you're in a context where it's more relaxed, he's a completely different guy. He's very open-minded. That was really, we share on different things, and I really realized that he has changed quite a bit since I've known him, and also that he's a man who has principles, but he's able to go. But at the same time, even though he has principles, he's a very pastoral man. Like, he's a good priest, and sometimes we have to go according to the church teaching, and we all do. But at the same time, we have to go beyond because of different situations, and he has this pastoral approach to be close to the people.
Always with new pastoral projects, Father Fernand Villeneuve says that his days are too short for the many things he wants to do. One of his mottos is, "If you are not able to be a star in the skies, try to at least be a lamp in your house." As a parish priest and friend to many, Father Fernand Villeneuve has certainly succeeded in being a star in the skies of the Lord.
I'm Father Hervé Sauvé. I was raised and born in Cochrane, Ontario. It's about an hour drive from here. It's a very small town. If you blink your eyes going by, you'll probably miss it. So I did my grade 9 to grade 13 in Kapuskasing. And at the time, I already had the call to the priesthood. It was probably in grade 7 or 8 that I felt the call to serve the Lord. And for me, it was very clear in my mind. It was in the priesthood. I fought against it for about 10 years. I didn't want to be a priest because all my life, by the time I was in grade 4, I knew exactly what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a school teacher. I was going to get married to Diane Laferrière. I wanted 3 kids, and I wanted to be a history teacher. And by the time I was in grade 7 or 8, all those dreams were shattered when I felt this inner call to the priesthood. But like up to a point, I was the Lord was very gentle with me, and it's only little by little that He was able to get me to do as well. In 1993, I was ordained to the priesthood in the small church of Fauquier. It was full packed. The community center was also packed because the church wasn't big enough to hold everybody. And it was really like a big celebration of the whole town because it was one of their sons who was being ordained to the priesthood, and it was the pride and joy of the whole community. So the day of my ordination, I really felt supported by the whole community. I remember when just before the ordination, like there was tons of people in the church. Everybody was talking together. They were laughing. They were happy. And then afterwards, when I entered the church, when it was time to do the opening procession, it was packed, but complete silent. So it was really something that I felt supported by the people, the community, my family. So that was an incredible experience in my life. And after the ordination, I was sent to, I was a full-time teacher and assistant priest in 6 or 7 different communities. So that lasted not too long, because I realized soon afterwards that it was impossible to save the world. It had been saved once, so I didn't have to save it a second time. So afterwards I left teaching. I was full-time in ministry in the parish of Geraldton, where I really experienced different things, and I was with Father Bouillon, who was quite a mentor to me. He was an incredible guy to work with, a good priest, and a priest who gave me a lot of freedom.
He did his training with me when I was in Geraldton. The way it started was Sister Denise Brochu was the pastoral director of the diocese, and also the director of vocations in the diocese. So when Hervé was decided to become a priest, she contacted me and said I would like to be able to work, because I worked well with Denise, and she asked me if I could help her with taking care and accompanying Father Hervé in his journey to the priesthood. And I said, okay. So I went there. We went to Ottawa, to the university, the seminary, and met with the vocation director and the people who were in charge of the spiritual directors and that. And we had a couple of very good gap sessions. And they sort of laid it on the line, what they expected and what they wanted. We had to write reports and that of his journey as a parish priest. And what he did is that he came in Geraldton, and he worked with me and as a pastoral agent for a couple of years in Geraldton and Nakina, also Long Lac. And during that time, it was really interesting because he was afraid to become a priest, because he was afraid in the sense, not that he couldn't be a priest, but he wanted to have a job on which to fall back on if things didn't pan out. So we talked about it, and he said, I would like to go to school and study, become a teacher. I said, okay. Now, the other priests in the diocese did not think that was a good idea, because in case he went, he wouldn't become a priest. And I said, well, that's just the point. It's better to be safe than sorry. So let's prepare him and give him a chance beforehand, make his decision, because I was convinced that he was going to be a priest. Because the thing about Hervé is that with me, I became a priest, I studied, I worked at becoming a priest. But with Hervé, he's a priest by intuition. In the sense that if he sees something, he responds to it, he reacts to it from his guts, not just from his head. I've learned to do that, but it took me a long time. With him, he wasn't even a priest yet, and he was doing it. So that in that sense, it was a great challenge, and I accompanied him. And I will say, I told him and I encouraged him, Hervé, go to normal school, go and get your degrees, and then come back. If it's meant for you to be a priest, you will be. If not, no problem. Nothing gained, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So he said, okay. So he went down, but as I say, this was not much appreciated by many of the clergy. And as a result of that, I've always had a very special place for Hervé in my heart. It was the first person that I accompanied, and I think that I helped in his decision to becoming a priest. The other thing is that he's an extremely intelligent person. And how would I say? When he discovers something new, he's like a kid with new candy. Like he's all bubbly and spontaneous, and everything comes out. And there's nothing greater in the whole wide world. and especially when he's talking about the kids and that in Cochrane. He just had a weekend or something not too long ago, and when he was finished talking to me about it, I was standing at the phone here for almost half an hour, and he just didn't stop. Like bang, 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 and say, yeah, okay, I know Helve, down boy, but so in that sense, he's very spontaneous, and the other thing also I think that about Helve is that, as I said a while ago, for him to be a parish priest is almost intuitive, and that's something that you don't learn, that you don't teach, you just do. And in that sense, I think that he has it.
Personally, the parish that was close to my heart was the parish of Gilton, St. Teresa's Parish. And when I was replaced by another priest, I told him, be nice to the people, they were my first love. And I really found that I was close to them. And I wasn't that close to the people in Cochrane, but that over the course of the last few years, it has changed because I know the people more and more. I haven't been here as long as I've been in Gilton, but the fact that I had to go back in time and look at the archives of the parish, it's as if the parish of the Transfiguration have become one of my children. And I feel, and the relationship with the parish has changed because I feel very close to the parish, but also my relationship to the people have changed also because they are the people that I read about in those archives, and then I see them with a different perspective, and I know that they were here before me. They had at heart this parish, and now I have to admit that I feel very, very close to the parish of the Transfiguration. It's my baby, and wherever I leave, I always leave a mark. And when I was in Gilton, I renovated the whole sanctuary. And here at the Transfiguration Parish, well, we were able to purchase the stained glass window. And the stained glass window, I had it in mind. I really wanted to have one, but I said it cannot come from the parish priest because they say, it's the parish priest's idea, and I wanted to come from the people. And about 3 years ago, during our PPC meeting, parish pastoral committee, one of the ladies said, well, Father, would it be possible to purchase a banner of the Transfiguration? We have nothing in the church that represents our parish. And I said, that's my cue. I said, we could purchase a banner. It's about $1,500. But I said, if we purchase a stained glass window, it's much more expensive, but it would last more than 10 years. So that was the beginning of the project of the stained glass window. The idea came from the people, and eventually I took the idea and make it a reality. So it's up to a point, it's the people's mark, but it's also my mark here at the parish.
I'll never forget Cochrane. I'll never forget the good time I've spent with the people there. And it's always special when I meet the people of Cochrane, and they welcome me and they treat me well, and I'm very grateful for that. It's always special to pass there, and yes, and still I'm going to Cochrane because we have a school of formation for Message. This is a biblical animation. We're almost through, but I still go in the new school, and I'm working with Suzanne Carrière and with Alice Lorrain and myself, and I'm still going to Cochrane, though I don't see all the people I would like to see, but it's I'm here now, and also. You have a parish priest, a wonderful person in the person of Hervé Sauvé, and he has to. I'm no more there, but I always like to encounter and to meet and to welcome the people that I've known. Yes, you're a beautiful and wonderful community in Cochrane.
A happy 100th anniversary because it's the parish, and the parish, it's the people. It's like the church. The church, it's not the Pope, the bishops, the priests, and the sisters. The church, the real church with a capital C, it's the people. And the parish, the real parish with a capital P, is also the people of Cochrane. And I wish them a happy 100th anniversary. And hopefully the younger generation will be able to celebrate 150 years.
To each and every one, for being such a welcoming community, both for myself and many other priests. And I think here Father Jean-Paul Descaries and Father Léon Boilly and a couple of others who have mentioned to me how they felt welcomed and appreciated and accepted in Cochrane. That's a gift that you have. Please maintain it, keep it going, and let it grow.
The future of the church will be different. The first Christian communities, when they were celebrating Mass in homes, and after the meal, they would share a loaf of bread and a cup of wine. That's the way it was done in the first Christian communities. Later on, it changed. During the Middle Ages, it was very different from what we know today. And it was very different from what took place in the Concile de Trente in the 16th century. And the church, the way we celebrate Mass today, is very different from what my parents experienced. My parents experienced Mass in Latin. The only thing I remember from the Mass is Latin is in the past there was a railing at the front. You had to kneel at the railing and to receive Holy Communion on your tongue. And then I remember that, and it's very vague in my mind, I remember going to the railing with my mom. She was wearing a hat, something that she would never wear, but in those days you needed to wear a hat in church. And she was at the railing. That's the only thing I remember from the church back then, because I'm the first, when I did my first communion, we were the first group to receive it in our hands. I never learned the old catechism, like question answered. It was the new catechism. And also my theology was very different from the theology of 1950. I did mine in the late 1980s, and theology then was very much different from what they experienced way back then. So yes, the church of tomorrow will be different from today, but I see it in a very positive way. And I was saying just a few months ago in one of my homily, the best is yet to come.
Est-ce que vous savez pourquoi je porte un vêtement vert? C'est quoi? C'est pourquoi? L'espérance que nous donne une communication intime avec le Seigneur. Un nouveau visage, c'est un visage d'espérance. Et nous vivons cette espérance. Que le Dieu Tout-Puissant vous bénisse, le Père, le Fils et le Saint-Esprit.